Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into something really fascinating: the completely different ways people in the US and China think about their money. It's a story of spending versus saving, and believe me, the contrast is pretty wild. All right, let's just start with a fact that might just blow your mind. In China, the gross savings rate is almost 46%. Let that sink in. For every $100 that come in, nearly 46 get tucked away. Now let's look at the US, where that number is usually floating around just 5%. I mean, that's not a small gap, right? That is a massive tenfold difference in how people handle their finances. So what in the world is going on here? How is that even possible? Okay, let's dive in and break it down, starting with the American side of the story. So first up, we have to look at the American spending habit. And this is no accident, it's a consumer culture that has been built piece by piece over decades. Here in the US, spending is practically a national pastime. We are surrounded, bombarded with sales, deals, and super easy ways to get credit. And then there's that social pressure, right? The whole keeping up with the Joneses thing. It actually has really deep roots, going all the way back to the post-World War II economic boom, where buying stuff was actually seen as your patriotic duty to keep the economy churning. Okay, now let's hop across the Pacific because the financial story in China could not be more different. Over there, a super high savings rate is driven by this powerful mix of culture, demographics, and just plain necessity. The cultural importance of money is so deep that, as the comedian Ronnie Chang points out, their big New Year's greeting isn't just Happy New Year, it's Gongzi Fasai, which literally means I hope you get rich. That one phrase tells you so much about what the culture really values. And this doesn't just start when you're an adult. Nope. From the time they're little kids, they get lucky money in red envelopes, and they're taught to save it. The idea that saving is a virtue, that it's honorable, and that building wealth is a direct sign of success, that gets ingrained from day one. And then you've got this incredible demographic pressure. The country's old one-child policy had this totally unintended consequence. It created a massive gender imbalance, at one point hitting a peak of 122 boys for every 100 girls. This led to this intense competition among men to be seen as a good provider, and you know how you prove that? By having a whole lot of savings. But it's not just about culture. There are some very real, very practical reasons to save too. A lot of people worry that the state pension system won't be enough when they retire. They worry about how they're going to pay for healthcare down the road or for their kids' education. All of this creates this powerful need to build your own financial safety net. And it also explains why there's this general desire to avoid debt. Okay, so we get the why. We see the cultural forces and the practical pressures. But what about the how? How do people actually do it? What's the secret sauce that makes such a high savings rate possible? Well, the secret isn't some ancient mystical trick. It's actually a remarkably simple and disciplined system where every single dollar gets accounted for. Here in the West, we actually have a name for it: zero-based budgeting. The idea is simple. Every dollar that comes in gets a specific job to do, whether that job is paying rent, buying food, or, and this is key, going into savings. So here's what that looks like in the real world. You start with your income, and then you subtract every single expense. And what's really important here is that your savings goals are treated like non-negotiable bills, not just whatever's left over. The whole point is to get to exactly zero at the end, which means no money was wasted or just sort of disappeared. Now, a tool like this is really powerful, but it's guided by a core philosophy. To really make it sing, you've got to understand the 4 key principles that this whole frugal mindset is built on. But before we even get to the principles, you have to understand the motivation. For so many people, like the father of the person who inspired our source material, this mindset came from real hardship. Saving wasn't some fun hobby to build wealth. It was a survival tool to make sure you never went hungry. And that powerful, survival-based mindset is channeled into these 4 principles. They seem really simple on the surface, but when you put them all together, they become this incredibly effective system for building real financial security. Let's look at each one. So, principle number 1 is to stay humble. This is all about consciously avoiding that flashy consumer lifestyle. The goal isn't to impress your neighbors with designer brands and fancy cars. It's about flying under the radar and focusing on what really matters: security, not status. Number 2 is about radical frugality. It's the challenge to live on the absolute smallest slice of your income that you possibly can. And again, this often comes from experiences of hardship, like remembering a time when all you could afford to eat was a plain, tasteless bun. It makes saving your default setting, not an afterthought. Principle 3 is all about getting brutally honest about your needs versus your wants. Look, spending money on a real need, like a good desk chair that protects your back while you work, that's totally okay. But you have to be super disciplined when it comes to wants, like dropping a ton of money on designer clothes that do the exact same job as the ones that cost a fraction of the price. And finally, number 4. This is one we all kind of know deep down, but it is a huge lever you can pull to save money fast: eat at home. In this culture, getting together with friends often means having group dinners at someone's house. It makes being social affordable instead of relying on expensive restaurants every time you want to see people. So when you pull it all together, the big takeaway here isn't really about one specific budgeting trick. It's about a total, fundamental shift in your entire perspective on money. And it leaves us with a final question to think about. What would change for us if our financial mindset was less about what we can buy today and a whole lot more about the freedom and security we can build for tomorrow?